Shalom. Shalom to you, O listener, to this message. Shalom. My name is Symmanayah. Welcome to Return to the Promised Land Judgment Series. This is the 21st installment. It is embedded in the Judgment Series because there are decisions we must make, my brothers and sisters. We will find in the coming days the decisions we make will make a big difference in where we find ourselves positioned in the coming times, in the coming days. Yes, my brothers and sisters, we will find that our minds, our emotions will be challenged beyond belief. And it is time now to make a decision to render a judgment on how you will pursue, how we will pursue improve worship and obedience to the Almighty Father Yahuah. If you are one who seeks to do His will, I call you my brothers and my sisters. With that said, let me go into this segment. This 21st segment, is about bread. Yes, bread. Now, what came to your mind as soon as I said bread? For some, it might be food. It might be that French loaf, that Italian loaf, homemade baked rolls. Maybe for some, unleavened bread might have come across. All types of bread. This is about bread. And come and hear these words, my brothers and sisters. End times are here, and they will bring a time of effective discipline for bringing unity among a set-apart children of Yahuah. Many of us, including me, desire to witness Yasharal come together in unity. All too often, we sometimes neglect that this requires processes and details sharpened in set-apartness, obeyed by the Almighty Father to bring about unity. There's much anticipation regarding being gathered from the four corners of the earth. Many people who once believed in the pre-tribulation rapture are realizing that that is a wicked and evil teaching and erroneous. Yeah, people might use the excuse, well, you believe one thing, I believe another, and let every man be a liar. But the truth of the matter is there will not be a pre-tribulation rapture, my brothers and sisters. And as we are awakened, many are coming to realize that the time will come when we will be gathered from the four corners of the earth as it is written in the scriptures. We have grown to call this the final exodus. Some will call it the second or final pilgrimage, or even the greater exodus. While the anticipation is growing among individuals as we are awakening, the truth of the matter is that there are details and processes that we must and we will find ourselves beginning to be mindful of. As anticipation emerge, another truth is there will be a rise, a visibility of 144,000 Hebrews, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes mentioned in Revelation 7 chapter. Please note, my brothers and sisters, I say Revelation 7th chapter, because if you go back into Genesis, you'll see the 12th out of the 12, Dan was mentioned. Dan is not mentioned in Revelation 7, for that was a tribe that went off to idolatry, purge from being spoken of again. My brothers and sisters, Revelation 7 chapter mentions 12 tribes, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes, but it also mentions a great multitude consisting of many nations, kindreds, and tongues. Keep in mind, I want you to be assured, my brothers and sisters, there are individuals receiving convictions whose spirits are being stirred and they are being convicted to recognize, to believe, and to echo their representation from the specific tribes. They must know, individuals, each who are being drawn to be a part of the 144,000 must know the tribe that they're in and will. But also keep in mind this, it doesn't mean if you don't know what tribe you're in that you don't know if you're Hebrew or not. Keep in mind the process that is going forth is you have 144,000 Hebrews, but there is a great multitude of many nations. That includes Hebrews who don't know what tribe they're from, Hebrews who do know what tribes they're from, many other nations, kindreds, and tongues who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, brought together under one banner. Ultimately, once each of the 12 tribes in Revelation 7 chapter have been fulfilled, we will all fall under the banner of Yasharal, the children of the Almighty Father Yahuah. Over the years, I've been convinced that the unity will come for Yasharal, and it comes at a price. It requires work, much work. I'm committed to seek to do the will of the Almighty Father Yahuah. And with that said, the messages that I present because I believe he who gives me life has directed me to do so. Given the time that we are in, I have no doubt Yasharal will be made whole, that unity will emerge. End times is proving that things that we have taken for granted will rise to be a priority in the coming of days. For example, bread. In this segment, I'm compelled to speak on bread. Yes, bread. Take a moment, ponder on what comes to mind when I speak of bread. Now consider what you may have had at the top of your mind. As soon as you heard bread, did it make you hungry? Did you think about fresh bread? Do you think about the softness of bread? The types of bread? One that you may have grown fond of when making a sandwich, or putting butter, or cream cheese, or any type of spread. What came to mind? Be honest, my brothers. Be truthful. Now let me remind you. Did you know that Yahushua Mashiach is the bread of life? Did he come to mind first? Let me share some things with you as I continue. John 6:35 says, and Yahushua said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not get thirsty at all. Now I want to drop down, that was the 6th chapter of John. I want to drop down to the 47th verse. John 6:47 through 51. He says, truly, truly I say to you, he who believes in me possesses everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread which comes down out of the heavens, so that anyone might eat it and not die. I am the living bread which came down out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. Now, many people, my brothers and sisters, don't understand how him being the bread of life and how people will eat of his flesh. What he's saying is, as the bread of life, you will see physical evidence of his presence among us. Remember, when you eat, you break down the things you eat, and it becomes the nutrients that you get contributes towards your body that is physically alive. My brothers and sisters, Yahushua not only wants us to just believe that he is the living word of Yahuwah made flesh among us. He is the word of Yahuwah that sacrificed, that presented a sacrifice and resurrection. He is the spirit of Yahuwah sent in Yahushua's name to guide and teach us. And as we learn more of him, as we consume by listening, see, it's going in what we hear. By seeing, it goes into our eyes, what we hear and see. And what influences us that is set apart are the rudiments of Yahushua Mashiach, the attributes of set apartness coming at us, going inside of us. And as we learn, as we grow in maturity, it reflects outwardly as well. My brothers and sisters, there are many spiritual things of which I have witnessed people struggle with understanding. I have witnessed individuals read the passages and then think that that's simple. I know about bread and bread of life, and go on. I've even witnessed individuals who prefer to dissect the word bread, going from taking it to the modern Hebrew, only to return back to English, missing the point altogether, consuming unnecessary time, for modern Hebrew is not the original language. So if you're doing it because you believe you are ordered by the Spirit of Yahushua, hallelujah. But if you're doing it to impress or to think that you're going back to your roots, do not be deceived. Modern Hebrew is Aramaic. But this subject is about bread and the bread of life. I submit to you, in order to better understand Yahushua Mashiach as the bread of life, there are some details. There's some growing and understanding that are necessary for us to better improve our knowledge of him, for becoming aware of him, seeking to discern his presence within our lives and among us, it requires work, study, pray, discernment. Allow me to share this with you, my brothers and sisters. Matthew 26, verse. As they were eating, Yahusha took bread, having blessed, broke it, and gave it to the taught ones and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." You see, my brothers and sisters, it wasn't enough to just say he was the bread of life and just leave it there. It's not enough to just say, "Oh yeah, I know Yahushua is the bread of life." We must be aware that he distributes life to those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father. And therefore it is blessed. It becomes favored. It becomes shared. It becomes given. He said he gave it to his taught ones. You see, we cannot take the bread of life. It is given to us. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23 and 24. For I received from the master that which I also delivered to you, that the master Yahushua, in the night in which he was delivered up, took bread, and having given thanks, he broke it and said, "Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. Do in remembrance of me." You see, my brothers and sisters, it required looking, listening, receiving, and knowing what to do. It requires understanding the value. And so the Most High gave us something to see, something to witness, something to be taught and learned as he make alive how he is indeed the bread of life, Yahushua HaMashiach. My brothers and sisters, as the scriptures come alive, if we remain prayerful, one would be able to discern that there is so much knowledge and wisdom to get from Yahushua being the bread of life. The Almighty Father Yahuwah sent his set apart spirit in Yahushua's name to teach us, to guide us, to comfort us. Now allow me to present why it would be wise to understand that natural bread, or to be more specific, we could say food. If you say, well, let's break it down. The Hebrew meant this, or one word may mean this. The thing is, it was something to eat, physically eat, natural food. I did a recording on water. Now I want you to come to witness what can be said about bread. The basic things we need to live naturally and physically are fresh air, fresh water, food, and a safe place. We have read in times past when Yasharal was traveling, how they were hungry and desired food, and the Most High sent manna and quail, and he provided them with something to eat. My brothers and sisters, how many of us keep it top of mind that the value of fresh water, the value of food, the value of being in a safe place is necessary and will prove to be necessary as end times ramp up? These things have been taken for granted. Are you aware that man has gotten away from foods in their original state and have produced genetically modified organisms as substitutes from the original breeds of vegetation and grains? Man has also contaminated our foods with many fillers, byproducts, chemicals, and other substances, all most widely influenced by greed. Believe it or not, these fillers, chemicals, and other foreign substances inflate a false narrative about the very bread we find ourselves eating, unless we grew it, ground it, and baked it ourselves. You see, not only has greed brought about these contaminations and infiltration to our food system, but also actions to mask that it is not much food on the planet as we think. Yes, there's drought and famine in many parts of the world. But because the most industrialized nations are the ones that's benefiting, many of the unindustrialized or newly industrialized nations have grown to know what it means to face food shortages. Soon and very soon it will become widespread, for end times foretell a time of famine, great famine and pestilence. While most in the industrialized nations have taken for granted bread, or to be more specific, food, there are millions of people starving across the planet. I want you to know this, O Yasharal, those days are coming, and will become widespread across the planet. I want you to take attention back to specifics regarding bread. Let me say this. For those who would rather pose an argument as to whether or not the Hebrew word is not bread, ask yourself, is the Hebrew word akin to food or something that you would eat to sustain your natural body? And if so, read on, listen on. Hear these words, my brothers and sisters. Bread comes in many types, shapes, flavors, and conditions. Since I do not want to turn this into a bake-off communication, I want to bring your attention to leavened bread versus unleavened bread. I also want to inform you that there are times the word leaven is good and times when it can be wicked. Never forget this. There are erroneous teachers who would have you think that the word leaven is not good at all. Consider this, my brothers and sisters. Matthew 13:33. The Messiah himself is quoted as saying another parable he spoke to them. And this is what the quote says. The reign of the heavens is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened. Keep in mind, my brothers and sisters, the scriptures are speaking out to the ones drawn by Abba Yahuah, drawn by the Almighty Father Yahuah. Are we not aware of John? I believe it's 6:44. How we are told that no man can come into the Mashiach unless they are drawn by Yahuah to him. Let me make sure so it won't be a guess. John 6:44. Let's see if I'm right on that. Yes, it reads, no one is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I shall raise him up in the last day. And let us also be mindful of John 12:32, where Yahushua HaMashiach mentions, where it is mentioned that 12:32, he say, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, shall draw all men to myself. My brothers and sisters, how do we lift up Yahushua HaMashiach? 1, by identifying him and acknowledging him. 2, by studying and praying and getting to know him. 3, by following his guidance, his teachings, discerning the life in the scriptures, coming together in obedience to all that is set apart. My brothers and sisters, the bread of life brings so much to us. And so when it says, in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened, what do you think the 3 measures are? Let me share with you. Even though it say 3 measures, he speak of the process in which life was given to us. 1, we must believe that Yahuah is the Almighty One, Spirit everywhere at all times. 2, we must believe that Yahuah manifests his word in the person of Yahushua HaMashiach and made the sacrifice and resurrection. 3, we must believe that upon the resurrection of Yahushua HaMashiach, that the Almighty Father Yahuah, not only through his word manifest in the person, not only through the death or sacrifice and resurrection, but also he sent his set apart spirit in Yahushua's name, as it is written in John 14:26, to teach us, to guide us, to comfort us, to remind us. You see, and until all was leavened, all his children were influenced by his set apart actions, by his set apart plan. There is no Trinity, but there are descriptions in the processes in which the Most High have brought about restoration and life to us through him. He, Yahuah, the Almighty One. By using Yahushua, we identify the plan, the process. We identify the sacrifice and resurrection. We identify the set apart spirit living within us, working with our inward man, our spirit, to bring about, to clean this tabernacle that we call our body. But there's also a wicked leaven, my brothers and sisters. Matthew 16:6, if we read it, it says, and Yahushua said to them, mind, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Beware of that wicked leaven. Beware of those who are undiscerning. They may be well studied in the text, but they have neglected the life that is necessary to bring the text alive. They have neglected leaning on the Spirit of the Almighty Father so that they are able to rightly and set apartly, such a word exists, but in a set apart manner, echo what is necessary regarding the scriptures, regarding doctrine, regarding teaching, regarding demonstrating what we must do to walk in full set apartness to the Most High. While there are many among us who would consider this message a waste of time, others will grow to discern the wisdom in these words. An individual who knows what it takes to make bread may even be more aware that it requires some type of flour and or leavening, depending on what type of bread is being made. There are times when unleavened bread is ordered by Abba Yahuah, and it is for a just cause. We see that even one of the feast times is entitled the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It is a time when we are supposed to be mindful of not being influenced by man, not being embracing influences that could be a detriment or a distraction. It is a natural process brought to us to lead us to a spiritual process of not being leavened or influenced by things that are outside of set apartness. My brothers and sisters, to get bread, there are processes from growing to harvesting the grain to grinding it to preparing it for baking to eating it and more. If we were to skip any of these processes, something would be missing and the full benefit could not be gained. We will miss out. Just as it is with natural bread, the bread of life, Yahushua Mashiach, requires us to be able to believe him, to draw close to him, to identify, to study and learn of him, to discern his words, his guidance, to be able to witness him working in us, through us, one towards another, knowing how to subject ourselves when the Spirit of Yahusha chooses the other to speak through, knowing how to speak in Yahusha's name when he is directing us to speak. You see, there are processes and details, my brothers and sisters. And though I may have taken a moment or two or more to explain this, these processes can happen within an instant. For the word of Yahuah is quicker than any two-edged sword, even when working through us. End times will prove that just as we have taken bread for granted, we have taken Yahushua Mashiach for granted as well. But this too will end. The Almighty Father has promised discipline. It is my position that the rise of a set-apart, disciplined nation will come to be. I believe, my brothers and sisters, even the simplest of things, there are some things that he has provided before us that are simple. And if we see their connection to our spiritual maturity, we may just indeed shout, hallelujah. Next time you eat, next time you place a morsel of bread into your mouth, think on these things. Think on how that bread took and went through multiple processes to reach you. Think on how that bread is a result of some kind of grain. Yeah, some of these breads these days, most of these breads that we buy, if we didn't bake it ourselves, has fillers. And think about that as well. But I want you to think on how Yahushua Mashiach, the bread of life, made the greatest sacrifice to get to us. How the ridicule, the persecution, dealing with our stiff necks. What processes, but he reached us. Oh, Yasharal, Yasharal, the day will come when we will consider the importance and details as it relates to our future. We must and will do things that will satisfy the Almighty Father. This must occur in order to bring about the fulfillment of the gathering from the four corners of the earth, the fulfillment of bringing his children together in unity, the fulfillment of a rise of a set-apart nation. My brothers and sisters, when we pray earnestly and seek to discern the things that are true, we just might find ourselves seeing that there are many natural reminders and connections between the natural bread and the bread of life, Yahushua Mashiach. Rise up, my brothers and sisters. There are many cues that point to Yahushua Mashiach as the bread of life. Let us pay attention to what we can learn. This life, we will discover the flowing attributes of set apartness coming passing through some of the natural things that we see as they are linked to set apartness and contribute towards a spiritual direction that will bring us to improve worship and obedience to the Almighty Father. Behold, my brothers and sisters, behold bread, all that it took to get to our mouths. Behold bread, and what does it do for our bodies? Behold the bread of life, Yahushua Mashiach, and all that he provides to our bodies and soul. Let us begin to realize that the emergence of the 144,000, 12,000 Hebrews from each of the 12 tribes of Yasharal, as they are written in Revelation 7 chapter. Let us begin to realize that this group will indeed echo and demonstrate the presence of the bread of life, Yahushua Mashiach. Let us not forget and pay close attention that the great multitude will be alongside the 144,000 Hebrews. Let us realize that there will be individuals who will receive convictions as to whether they are from a specific tribes. And there are those who will be received to say, don't worry about the specific tribe. I'm not calling you to represent or to be a diplomat of one of the 144,000. I'm calling you to be among the great multitude, to know that all together, when all said and done, is one tribe, one nation, under one banner, Yasharal, set apart children of Yahuah. Know this, my brothers and sisters, the word of the Almighty Father will prove to be true. Let us begin to pray and discuss what is expected in the coming days. Let us begin to discover the details that must and will be done. Be encouraged, my brothers and sisters. Among the things that are simple, for example, bread, are reminders that point to our spiritual well-being when we allow the spirit of the bread of life, Yahushua Mashiach, work within us, through us, one towards another, according to all that is written, and so much more that directs us to the Almighty Father, Yahuah. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, my name is Symmanayah. I encourage you to continue to seek earnestly to discern what must and will be done now as well as in the coming of days. Things that are ordered by the Almighty Father, Yahuah, in Yahushua's name will become visible, acknowledged, believed, confirmed, and proven. Until next time, I bid you, Shalum, my family. Shalom.